Olá, boa tarde a todos, bem-vindos. Cá estamos para mais um programa de Exo Realidades. O tema de hoje é controverso, como sempre, é apaixonante também e divide opiniões, que é algo que também se torna muito interessante para a discussão. Francisco, Rodrigo, obrigado por estarem presentes, bem-vindos a esta aventura uma vez mais.
Obrigado, Filipe. Rodrigo, viva. Hoje, de facto, temos o Gary King connosco. O Gary King, com quem eu estive pessoalmente no Brasil, em novembro, quando foi o Congresso de Ufologia do Piauí. O Gary King é uma pessoa interessada e faz investigação na área dos crop circles, da colheita, dos círculos nas colheitas das plantações. Tem sido uma presença constante no History Channel, no National Geographic, no Discovery, enfim, já participou em diversos documentários também, não digo privados, mas sem terem passado nas grandes televisões, e também costuma promover visitas de estudo, digamos assim, aos locais onde normalmente decorrem os crop circles. Portanto, e para além de também fazer dá palestras reservadas a grupos também sobre o tema. Portanto, é uma pessoa com muita experiência e, enfim, vamos tentar ouvir um pouco do seu trabalho, a interpretação que faz sobre o fenómeno e a que conclusões é que chegou ao longo desta sua jornada.
Muito bem.
Portanto, acho que o podemos convidar.
Vamos a entrar. Isto.
Hi, Gary. Welcome. You're muted. You are muted still.
Again.
Okay.
Hello, nice to see you all.
So, Gary, today we are going to speak about crop circles, and we wanted to share with the Portuguese public who is Gary King, what led Gary King to research crop circles, what has been the experience of researching crop circles, and what conclusions you may have found during your path dealing with the phenomena. So who is Gary King to start?
Who is Gary King? Okay, Gary King was in 1996. In 1996, had pretty much worked most of my working life that far as a legal executive, which is like a paralegal in the US, and a private investigator. I run my own private investigation agency in London, and I worked very hard for many years. And then in 1996. I suppose I had a breakdown, really. I was exhausted and my marriage wasn't doing very well and all the usual things that happen to people. So I took some time out of work and began doing yoga and meditation, Tai Chi, those kinds of things, to calm down and de-stress, and began reading books. And I'd been working so much for the previous sort of 12 or 15 years. I hadn't had a chance to sort of do these things for many years. So various books I started to read, and one of which was The Teachings of Don Juan by Carlos Castaneda. I became fascinated with the subjects of shamanism, which I hadn't previously heard of really, or didn't know very much about, and started to read books about that. And then I lived in Cardiff in South Wales at the time, and I went to a bookstore, and it was a sequence of coincidences that had happened in that day, during that day, and I met a teacher I'd done a lot of martial arts in my youth, and I met up with this teacher who was something of an expert in understanding chi at different levels, and he became my teacher. And during the course of that, after a few weeks, he was over from the United States. He said he was over. Part of the reason he was in the UK was to go and visit the crop circles. And I'd heard news articles about them some years before. You know, you see them come up on the news, but it's sort of dismissed in a couple of minutes. I remember seeing these pictures of and talking about maybe aliens were landing in the fields, and this was in like probably 92 or something like that, 5 years before. So we're now talking early part of 1997, towards the middle of 1997, when I catched the lift with him, basically said, you know, if you go into the crop circles, I'll come with you. You know, I was kind of going through a really hungry, kind of spongy stage in my life. You know, I was absorbing all this different stuff about philosophy and things that I hadn't really. I had an interest in when I was younger, but got married and, you know, did the crazy thing, and all that goes away. And so, yeah, I was being something of a sponge. So I was very interested in researching anything. So when that came up, I said, take me over there with you. And we went, and as we arrived in this really, I've never really been to such a huge, vast farming community area before. It's 1,300 square miles, Wiltshire in England. And there's so many farms, and it goes way back. It actually turns out that farming began in this area. And it contains all these other monuments like Stonehenge and Avebury and Silbury Hill, and these remnants of previous Neolithic cultures that seem to construct these monuments that, you know, we understand line up with the sun solstices and equinoxes and various things, but there's further enigmas within them that you know, can make you scratch your head and ask, well, how do these people know such things? And so alongside those monuments, you find these crop circles. But back to the story, I arrived that first day with my teacher, and as we came over the hill in a place called Alton Barnes, which is the sort of hub of where the crop circles, you know, it's like the center, and there's a very good reason for that. As we came over this hill, there was this crop circle in a field, and the hill sort of went down and then went up the other side, and there was a crop circle right in front of us. And I've often told the story, you know, I went inside that crop circle, and since then, 1997, I never really left. It was, I walked around with this guy, and he pointed out various things to me about the way the crop was laid over itself at different junctions, and at the edges of the crop circle, there were all the crop was, say, for example, laying in a forward direction with the heads of the wheat in front going away from me. But there were 2 or 3 stalks all the way around the crop circle going in the opposite direction, all around the edges. And you know, to a sort of anyone that's ever made anything, you know, you think, well, why would you do that, right? Why would you spend so much time putting just a few stalks in the other direction to the flow of the wheat if you want to get in and out in the middle of the night? What? And not many people notice it. You know, I still take people to crop circles today, and when I point these out, because it's in lots of them, they would never notice them, and people have said that to me. You know, you never notice them. So that was it, really. And then a bunch of different things happened. My teacher put me onto a guy called John Martineau, who owns a book company called the Little Wooden Book Company. And it turns out what happened, John was an Etonian and an Oxford-educated man. He, you know, as a younger man, gone along to the crop circles, and he was a bit of a genius with geometry. He'd been a student of John Michell at Oxford. And so he realized that some of the ways these circles were laid out had sort of tangential geometry, which was very precise, or there was implicit, hidden fivefold geometry within them. I've got slides and stuff I can show you with this, but there's you see sort of 5 circles and you think, oh, it's just 5 circles, right? But then when you put imaginary circles around it and then draw a 5-fold pentagram or an octagram inside, you find that it fits perfectly, all the proportions and ratios. So John immediately realized, you know, we're being spoken, you know, this is a language of geometry, like ratios and proportions. And he knew something about the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, which artists and architects have used throughout the ages to construct their ancient sort of monuments.
Have you ever felt some weird or strange feeling near or inside the crop circle? or have you ever witnessed something unusual?
Well, yes to both questions. Crop circles have different effects on you. I've had the opportunity of being a tour guide for many years, so I used to observe. One of the things my teacher told me when he took me to that first crop circle was observe yourself, watch yourself before you go into the crop circle, whilst you're in it, and what happens to you, how you feel and think and whatever else out. But he said, try not to think, just observe your own, like a meditation. And I urged, ever since, I've urged everybody to do the same thing when you go to crop circle, and it's quite profound. You can go into a crop circle and start crying. You can go into a crop circle and get a headache. As you walk towards the perimeter of a crop circle, you can feel that it's pushing you back. There's kind of like a magnetic resistance. Many farmers have reported that they've gone in with film crews and their equipment won't work inside crop circles. There's all those kinds of stories from back in the day. You can feel elated, you can feel drunk and confused. And because I've taken lots of people to crop circles, I've witnessed all of those effects happen to people. I've been able to build up a resistance, if you like, because I've probably been in around 1,000 crop circles now. And I can watch people and see that they'll go in, and different people have different effects. The crop circle is not, it seems to, a bit like homeopathic medicine or whatever, it speaks to them, deals with their own personal whatever's going on with them and affects them in individual ways.
You were still talking about the process that led you to basically right now living the crop circle phenomena in a full way, right? You dedicate your life mostly to research and to present the crop circle phenomenon to others.
Yes.
Being through documentaries or through those workshops you do or the tour guides. So yes, please continue, because it was not just the beginning when you when that professor, that teacher led you and you started feeling all those sensations inside the crop circle. Something more may have happened for you to just quit everything else and dedicate your life to this, right? Or no?
Well, I suppose it's a personality thing in some ways. Yeah, I'm a bit of a rebel, really, and I'll stand up. If I see something, and I really did see that these crop circles can't. After that first season, I really understood that this can't be man-made. This is serious. This is a serious message from something other, and I'd also experienced all the backlash from people, my family and friends and all sorts of people saying, what the hell are you doing going to these crop circles? Obviously people are making them. Two old guys, they've owned up to it, and there's another teams who go out at night and they're just trying to trick you. And I would present evidence, and I would present facts to them, and I would present speculations, because I really didn't know very much at that early point. But as years have gone on, it's become more and more comprehensive, where I've got lots of information that I can back up my arguments in various ways. And even then, so many people still sort of have that knee-jerk response of, well, it's just a couple of old guys. And because that infuriated me in a way, and because the onus was that, you must be crazy if you think there's something going on, I saw something of a challenge in putting my feet on the ground and saying, well, no, I'm not gonna budge on this. There's I'm gonna keep going, and I think there's something to look at that's magical here. And I went through a process, first of all being stubborn and saying, I'm just going to keep going into it, and I'm going to find out all I can. And every year I just went back and talked about them, and it was a whole transformational process going on in me, really, with what I thought I had to do is give the message out, or try and interpret the message, or I didn't know what the message was. I didn't know who was making it. There's so many questions. But it just told me it was so important that I had to stick with it, and that's just it, really.
You certainly, not all crop circles are man-made, and not all are natural or intelligence phenomena. And
Exactly.
so how can you differentiate each other? And when you do the tours, do you explain to those people with practical examples of how
Sure.
to differentiate those two phenomena?
Well, you know, it's dodgy ground actually, to say, oh, I put my you know, stamp of authority and expertise on the authenticity of this crop circle, and even from the early stages, you know, people encourage you to do that. You know, is this one real? Is this one real? Every time a new crop circle comes, and you feel this tremendous pressure, you know, that you've got to say, yes, yeah, no, I think that one's really go on. And so many other researchers have sort of crashed and burned right on live TV, you know, in the early days when they were posed those questions. So it's risky ground. But I over the time, so I used to avoid it as much as I could at first. You know, I don't know, you know. But as time went on, I drew up this kind of like almost as if it's a guideline that everybody can understand, right? You say, well, okay, people say they make them. All right. Let's have a look at some examples of have we got any video footage of people making them, right, from start to finish? You know, there's not much actually, surprisingly, right? You think after 7,000 crop circles there'd be video footage everywhere of people stamping out crop circles, but there's not a lot. So I pulled up video of the examples of people making crop circles and then measured what they did and how long it took them and what equipment they used and what the final result looked like from the air and what it looked like on the ground. And from that, you can say, well, you know, these 12 people, maybe, for example, the Mozilla Firefox crop circle that was made by 12 students, they took 22 and a half hours, working at night as well with torches on their heads and all that, to stomp down the Mozilla Firefox symbol in a flat field of wheat. And, you know, so you go, all right, 23 hours, they had refreshment breaks and they had an aeroplane, they had people on ladders, giving them all the help. So you can take note of all these facts and you say, right, 23 hours, 12 people, right, that's fair enough. So if a crop circle comes along that's 1,000 feet long and it's got 150 circles in it, and people at 11 o'clock at night were walking on the hill and it wasn't there, and you got it on video that there was nothing there, and then at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 hours later, you've got 1,000 circles, you know, with 1,000 feet diameter formation with 150 circles in it, and that's appeared in 5 hours. You know, then you know, when you measure that against what you witness when people do make them for demonstrations, there's a massive difference. And then when you go inside, the details become more pronounced because the ones that are made in front of us, when you go inside, all the crop is really badly damaged, and in a few days it all dies, and you know, it's smashed. When you go into a crop circle, have the opportunity to go in one at 4 o'clock in the morning that's just appeared, and you see that all the crop is fresh and it's not trampled or damaged in any way. In fact, as soon as you start walking on it, it starts crunching because you're the first person that's causing damage to it. Then you go, well, hang on a minute, how is this possible, right? So I made these kind of guidelines, right? Time frame, working conditions at night in 5 hours. Time frame's got to be done in 5 hours. It's got to be geometrically perfect and precise, and there mustn't be any damage to the crop. And so if you see that, then you've got to say, well, this warrants further investigation. This one potentially could be something mysterious. And
you also spoke about, you gave the example in the beginning about layers of the crop, and also the directions of the crop being also different in some areas, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, some of the weaving effects, some of the way that one layer will come from one direction, then a pathway will come in another direction, and it will lay over that, and then maybe another pathway is coming here, and they intersect. How they're laying over each other will create a shading effect from the air, which will then add a three-dimensionality to the whole formation when you take a picture of it from the air, and you go, okay, so they've laid this crop in certain ways, right, so that it's got this effect of 3D from the air. And it's another level again of fantastic artistry.
One of the details that also we can find on the internet is the mention of nodules on the crop. Is that real? Or
yeah, I've seen them myself. Yeah, I've actually got video footage of them. So quite often, so in the early days, scientific research was being done, although obviously there was people who said it's not valid and so on and so forth, and so that can be argued out. But soil samples were taken and crop from inside was taken and crop from outside was taken and sent off to a lab in Michigan, I think, in the United States. It was a Dr. W.C. Levengood who did the analysis, and they found that there were three energies present in, it seemed, in what was being analysed from the soil and the wheat. And so one of them is that there's microwaves, and what causes that? What the evidence for that is these nodules expand because they're being heated up from the inside, and then the water that's inside the stem needs an escape valve, and so as the node expands, little holes pop into these nodules. They're called expulsion cavities, and blow the steam out, and so then the crop dries off, and you can pick them up, and you can see these holes and burn scorch marks all around them.
But are those nodules found in all crop circles, or just in a few? No.
Yeah. Well, there were certainly a lot more in the early days, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of crop circles that crop was taken and sent off, and it was found in lots and lots and lots of them. But that's another part of the story, really. Where people felt, people like myself, researchers, who all chose a certain line to go down in their own research, some of them being sort of laboratory scientific evidence, because they felt that if they could present that kind of evidence to the public or to whoever, the press or the media, that they could get some attention. But it didn't work. As soon as they went down that road and they gathered all these samples and they gathered all this data, and it's there for people to see. There's a website called BLT Research, and a lot of it was published there. It fell on deaf ears, and a lot of people went out and discredited the biophysicist, even though he did amazing things. He patented new technologies off of things he discovered from the analysis of crop circles, which is, in the patent office, amazing stuff that enhances the yield of crop and stuff like this. So it didn't work. It's another example of something what we're up against when you're trying to work towards a paradigm shift with telling people that the world isn't what they think it is.
Yeah. So throughout your history of your life as a researcher in crop circles, did you only delve into the crop circles in the UK, or did you try to understand if the phenomena was international or worldwide, and what were the differences, if any, if you found them in other places?
So I was interested in. I visited some in Holland, and that was about it, really. I saw pictures of them on websites like Crop Circle Connector, and people who published books of various crop circles in their countries, like France and so on. Always what the consensus was that the hub of the more complex ones, and that the centre of the crop circles, was here in Wiltshire. I'm on a really big important call. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, don't worry.
Where was I? So yeah, the complex ones, which had the most sort of important message, was in Alton Barnes in Wiltshire, and that the ones that were around the world were less complex. Although in Canada there was hidden geometry similar to the five-pointed geometry found in simple circles in Canada. So that was of interest to me. But I felt that apart from them making the same kind of statements where they're seemingly giving symbols that were native to their country, sort of ancient Germanic symbols or French symbols, next to sort of ancient monuments, Neolithic monuments and stuff, was stamp marking the same kind of message. It was, and there was also a pattern in people who came from abroad to Wiltshire and visited crop circles and then went back to their country, and then crop circles began to appear in their country that somebody else did some research on. So I was content really to stay mostly focused on what I could visit and what I could go and touch and walk around in and see.
Why do you think that they are mainly in the UK, at least the most complex one?
I mean, this is where we move into the area of sort of like theories, and you can't prove, you can only build up a body of knowledge and say, well, maybe this is part of the answer. And that's probably where I would be comfortable saying I'm at with that. So this Neolithic culture that built these stone circles like Avebury and Stonehenge and Silbury Hill, you know, we've had various incursions into Britain, you know, the Romans and so on, where a lot of sort of pagan Celtic monuments were destroyed. That's Silbury Hill in the background. It's a pyramid. There's actually the body of a woman that's carved into the landscape just around it. So that represents the pregnant belly of the goddess. So it's, you know, it seems that there's a lot of evidence. There's a really good book called Legendary Landscapes, which some great research was done where they showed with bardic cultures and the ancient cultures and putting things together that the people that first started to farm here were very connected to fertility, the ideas of fertility and the goddess. And they chose this particular area for still completely unknown reasons, really. I mean, there's good evidence for why, based on some of the chalk landscape and the way that the underwater aquifers and water goes under the landscape that generates electricity. But that's another story. But they chose this landscape and they shaped it. They built that Silbury Hill around a goddess, and they had a burial ground of death, this circle of life on the other side of the hill called West Kennet Longbarrow. They built the largest stone circle in Europe, which encodes the cycles of the sun and the moon. Stonehenge encodes the sun and the moon and eclipses at the equinoxes and solstice, so they knew about crops. And Alton Barnes itself, there are a series of hills which form the shape of a woman's body, with two breasts and a pregnant belly and an umbilical cord going down into what's called East Field, which is the center of where the crop circle hub has been, where the most impressive crop circles and most, you know, action has been. And so it seems that we're being reminded of a couple of things, really. The difference when the time when the people of that land changed from being hunter-gatherers seemingly into farmers was on that land, and so that's a big important transition for civilization, because the ancient Greeks, you know, metrology, measuring things, literature and agriculture are the three main things which signify transferring from sort of hunter-gatherers into civilization. And so they did that, but also we're being reminded of what was there before and what that transformation into agriculture has done for us as a species. What knowledge we possessed before, it seems, of geometry and cycles of the planets, and it seems working together as a community to build these things rather than work, you know, as slaves that were under someone who was cracking the whip to put Stonehenge and that together. It seems that this was a national communal effort. There's evidence that there's soil from various other parts of the British Isles in Silbury Hill. So it seems people came from other farming areas to touch the goddess's belly with their own soil to, you know, to bless it or whatever, I don't know. But so there's such a concentration of human activity and a massive change in human, because what separates us humans from animals is that we can ask questions about the life that we lead and why we're here, and scratch our heads and ask questions about it, right? And have a language to communicate and think in an abstract way. And so there we are in this area, and you go, well, you know, this is, whoever chose to put the crop circles in this particular area thought very carefully about, probably, you know, because they've hidden geometry inside of it, it indicates that there's a bit of a puzzle going on here with this. And so when you dig deeper and you start looking into the landscape and the context where they're laid and placed and so on, you get another story about our history. And it's talking us about, it's almost like I've said many times, you know, we're not doing so well, really, are we, as humans? In the last 100 years or so, you know, there's all sorts of reasons why we're falling apart as a culture of civilization, whether it's international debt or, I don't know, Donald Trump, Bolsonaro, whoever, right? It's not going great. There's massive amounts of stress and people aren't feeling so great in the world. We probably could do better, but if that's the case, then being taught to or being communicated to about where we've come from and how we got to where we are can then make us make good decisions about maybe where we need to go in the future, where we want to go, and start changing in order to go that way. So that's like having your cards on the table by a really good therapist. They show you where you've been, where you are now, and why you got where you are now, which is agriculture and a surplus of grain which created wealth, and what that's done to us, and maybe where we could go in the future. For me, it kind of stitches together.
Philip?
What are, in your opinion, the possible origins of the crop circles? We know some of them are man-made, maybe others some natural phenomena. Do you have any other explanation?
Not really. Again, it's speculation. I can't prove anything. I always say that if you imagine in your neighborhood, you wake up in the morning, and when you come down, there's somebody's put this mysterious piece of paper through your door with a strange symbol on it. And you pick it up and you look at it and you think, what's this? And you walk out into your street to see who's put it through your door. And as you do so, all your neighbors around the street, right? Everyone in the street is going, who's this? What's this? And they've all got one, right? And they go, she's all scratching your head. Well, who gave us this? Who put this through the door? And then you get everybody in the street to check their CCTVs and nobody sees anybody. And then for the next 40 years, you keep getting these pieces of paper through your door, right? And you keep asking the same question, like, who put it through the door? Who put it through the door? And every time these symbols come through, they're all different, right? And they're all, and so do you, at what point, right, do you get where you say, look, obviously, whoever's putting them through the door doesn't want us to talk about them or doesn't want us to focus on them. They want us to maybe focus on what the symbol is, what's coming through the door. And that's the decision I took. So, because what I've seen so many things do is you go around in circles, right, about who's doing it or what's doing it, because you can't really prove it. There have been balls of light filmed going over them. I myself was a witness to a crop circle, and it was a big flash of white light.
There is a video in the internet with two spheres of light making a crop circle, I think in 70 seconds. You know that video?
Yes.
What's your opinion about it?
Well, I watched a very lengthy analysis by several experts on that video footage, and it was slowed down frame by frame. And I had spoken to people who first saw it off the camera when the man who filmed it came to the pub where everybody used to hang out. People who watched it there and then have told me about what happened at that time. I wasn't there myself at that particular time. And from that, I believe that there was something real in it. But I'll give you the main reasons why. The camera at the time was 1996, and it wasn't on a tripod. It was handheld at 25 frames per second. And so when you look at the horizon in the background, it's moving up and down throughout the whole of the time it's filmed. And it was much longer than what's on the internet. A lot of the footage got lost by somebody conveniently. That's another story. And those balls, they remain exactly the same height as they come down the field and go around, and they remain frame by frame perfectly, and not accounting for the movement of the camera, which didn't have any stabilization or anything in 1996. And the time frame, that crop circle wasn't there the night before. And although it looks fairly simple, that crop circle, it's actually got very complicated hidden sevenfold geometry inside it, which adds the weight to, in my mind, that there's something special there, because that's not easy to make at all. And the fact, the time frame of when it was filmed and when people first saw it, it wouldn't have been possible in that time in 1996 to have faked anything as good as that. Even in 2004, it was given to Disney animators, and they said, 2 weeks maybe with our equipment. Now it would be easier, right, in 2023, but not in 1996. So yeah, I think there was something in it.
What are currently the main hypotheses for the origin of the phenomena? What are...
Most people say extraterrestrials. Yeah.
That's one. Okay.
That's one of them, yeah. The other people will say Earth energies, ancestors. A lot of people...
Ancestors? What do you mean by ancestors?
The people that built the stone circles, or the ancient sort of, I suppose, the equivalent of the British Atlanteans, maybe they're spirits or something. There's all kinds of theories that people have, from wild and wacky to God, God himself is making them, because God is consciousness, and coming from a place of the anthropic principle where all is mind, or this quantum physics, then mind is manifesting to give itself the message to wake up or whatever. So who knows?
Okay.
Don't know. Yeah, that's as much as I know, really.
Back in 2019, I was there in I think it's Avebury, where there's the Crop Circle Museum. Have you been there? It was,
yes.
When I was there, it had just been inaugurated.
Yes.
Have you been there? What do you think about it?
Actually, it's been put together by a lady called Monique Klinkenberg from Holland, who's had a passion for the crop circles for a number of years and has always wanted to make a contribution to the crop circle community. So she had a mission to build this kind of center at first. She wanted to get a cafe together where people would come and meet and discuss and research crop circles. She wanted to do all sorts. She had all sorts of ideas. I've known her for many years. And she eventually, fair play to her, working with a German man called Andreas Müller, they put together this crop circle museum using photos from Steve Alexander, who's been a long-term photographer of the crop circles, and stories and information from various researchers contributed to put together a museum. So it gives people who come to the area a chance to see it. Oh, there you go. That's the Oliver's Castle footage.
Appears to show strange objects hovering above a cornfield. Below, complex circle formations appear.
Was this the video that you were talking about?
Yes, yes.
Retired electrical engineer Colin Andrews.
Old footage, nice.
Back to the museum. I know when I was there, they had the history of the phenomena, getting back to the 16th century, for instance, where it was interpreted as the devil or little elves that played in the fields, to now, to the main circles that showed. So it's in the sense that showing that there was also an evolution of the drawings.
Yes.
And so it also raises for a skeptic, it also raises the possibility, well, it evolved because people also learned how to better construct those formations.
Sure, that's that. I mean, that's a reasonable assumption that you would make on the face of it, right? If you talk to people, at a party or whatever, and you've never visited one, and you've never compared watching people make them and to actually, what you find in the morning that wasn't there the night before. For anybody who's sort of reading the newspaper or watching the television, it's very reasonable to come to that conclusion, of course, and that's part of. For my mind, it's part of another part of the magic, right? Because it's entirely up to us whether or not we choose to engage with these things. They're out there in the middle of nowhere in farmland, and farmers, they just spend their lives tending crop. They have 40 crops, and they don't really see very many people other than the locals. And so this happens. And so if you choose to go to them and engage with them, that's your choice, right? And people who don't and just see the news and what other people put out there can make various conclusions about it. But when you actually then go and spend the time that I've spent and you interact with other people, as I have, who've been there even longer, like Andy Thomas and Lucy Pringle and Michael Glickman, who was a very dear friend of mine, an architect professor, designer, John Martineau, John Michel, who I had the benefit of meeting, and all these people that are serious academics and have taught me things about the geometry, and then opened my mind up to ancient cultures of the way that they used it in architecture and so on. That's hidden and implicit solutions, even mathematical solutions, like square and the circle that's never been done in history before. We've consulted maths historians, and so totally fine to say they got more complicated because people got better at stamping crops down, at simple circles down. Very reasonable. But when you actually come here and you spend time and you start to measure them, you start to see that they're all on undulating ground, right? They're not on flat ground that they look like from the posters. The ground's never flat, right? Only for the demonstrations, the people who make them for the TV, they're in flat ground, right? Everywhere else crop circles appear on ground like this. And so when you consider it, some of that can be like 10 meters going up or 30 feet going up, sort of down. if you then measure the circles and you say, okay, these are not circles on the ground, they're oval, they're egg-shaped, so as to compensate for that topography of the land, so that when I photograph it from above, it's going to look like it's on a postcard. That's another whole level of engineering and time frame and consideration that you don't just do in 5 hours of darkness, you see, without damaging the crop and without anybody, like, you know, giving up on the designs, of which there are over 7,000. And so that's why I have a different opinion, because I've had feet on the ground for a long time.
I don't know if Rodrigo has any question. If not, I would like to ask Francisco to translate some questions from the chat to Gary, and then we'll move on into his slides, because we want to see some images more. So
Sure.
Just let me ask 2 questions regarding what we were talking about. Did you, from those ancient drawings or crop circles, did you find the same geometrical reference that you find today?
Yes. So if I think I understand your question correctly, so
right now you argue that there's a message. So there are geometric patterns that can lead to some sort of message.
Yeah,
but do you find those the same principle in those more simplistic formations that showed in the past?
Yes. So it's like the complex geometry that you see in the later crop circles that you said earlier. You know, it's because people got better at it. They started with these simple 2 or 3 circles and then we saw this big geometry. But the simple 3 or 4 or 5 circles, they had complex 5-fold and 8-fold stars hidden in them that you had to discover. So they were more complex because they were given solutions to mathematical ratios and proportions that we use in music, for example, how to choose and tune a musical scale with geometry, but they were hiding it. You had to find it. Whereas the later crop circles showed it to you. They showed you 5-fold geometry and 8-fold geometry in very beautiful designs. So it's like the early ones were in a way more complicated because they were puzzles you had to undo.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the questions from the public. We have Paulo Patricio, who asks if there's any kind of, do you know of any kind of book that may contain a set of photographs from all the different crop circles across the globe? Or do you have you done one, right?
No, I haven't done a book myself, no. But there's many people that have. The researchers that I mentioned earlier, Lucy Pringle, Karen Alexander, they have a website called temporarytemples.com. There's a man called Freddie Silver who published a book called Secrets in the Fields. There's many designs in there. There's lots and lots out there. You just go on Amazon, type crop circles, and you'll find there's lots of books that have got all these pictures in.
Marco is asking, or is saying that maybe this is a symbolic language that our subconscious may understand, a universal language of consciousness. Is there, for the people that go there to check to check in person those crop circles, is there a changing of their state of consciousness once they are inside the crop circles? Or, for instance, can you refer any of your, I think you've already told that, your experience being inside the crop circle?
Yeah, your consciousness gets affected. Sometimes it can be like you're on psychedelic plants inside a crop circle. I've had taken people as well who've said the same thing. It's like you're tripping, you know. Yeah, and he's right. See, number. This is the thing. Right? Geometry is number, but it's just number made visible, because number is abstract, right? We use symbols for numbers, but what are numbers really? And were numbers here before us, right? We created a number system based on what we observed around us. But what is number? And is it just a quantity or is it a quality? And it seems that ancient philosophers latched onto this, Plato and these people in ancient Greeks, because they realized that numbers are something fundamental to the universe. And so geometry is just an expression of number. So they had the 7 liberal arts, okay, it was taught in ancient Greece. The first 3 are called the trivium, which is grammar. The world is made of words for us humans, right? We name everything, and then we have other ways of being able to be abstract and so on, theorize and so on. And mathematics is one of those, right? Quantum physics is largely imaginary, used through equations that we've created, symbols. And so then we have logic, where we take those words and we logically arrange them to make an argument or form a dissertation or form a thesis, right, about the world that we live in. And we're all subject to logical fallacies. So sometimes we can trick ourselves and put a red herring in there, or we can appeal to authority, say, oh, it must be true, this part must be true because everybody believes it. Those are called logical fallacies. If you throw those out, then you're left with rhetoric, which was said to be the distilled wisdom of placing words in a logical way and then getting out of the nonsense and leaving you with something wise. And the way that they formulated truth was then with the quadrivium, the 4 liberal arts that followed that, which are number, geometry, music, and astronomy. And so geometry, number is number, and we as I say, it's abstract and kind of weird, and it behaves very funny. It's like it works together in different ways. There's relationships of numbers. Some numbers don't work well together and others do when you try and make a shape out of them. So geometry is that shape. A triangle is 3, a square is 4 in space. It defines a space, doesn't matter how big or small. And music is number in time. It's measured time. And astronomy, watching the planets move around the heavens, is number in space and time. And so it seems that our ancestors knew that they built these stone circles and measured the way the heavens moved around, which they thought was one big mind, one bigger anima mundus, you know, this mind, this consciousness, that our consciousness, our individual consciousness, somehow as above, so below, mirrored what was all around us. And if they could see the patterns of that and express it, which was number, was all around them, for example, the Fibonacci sequence. You start with 0, nothing, which is the world before the universe, before the Big Bang. Then you add the notion of 1, and 1 plus nothing is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 plus 3, 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. And you get this progression, this kind of spiral that everybody's seen. It's in ram's horns and galaxies, and it's everywhere. Flowers, and I've got a lovely picture I can show you of this. Even in a fetus of a human being, the same spiral unfolds. So it's these 3 numbers, 5, 8, and 13 from the Fibonacci sequence, go on to produce the golden ratio, which is in life all around us. It's even in the way Venus moves around us in the sky. So this then starts to build up and say, well, we're living in an intelligently designed universe. It can't be an accident that just these simple numbers and ratios are used as a basis for consciousness, for the material world being conscious and us being conscious. So long answer, sorry, Marco. I think it was Marco, but he's absolutely right. It is a universal language, number, and that's being expressed through geometric form, which take on harmonic musical ratios and speak to us in a universal way.
And so that answer, that not long, but that answer led to the conclusion. Right? This was in advance. So Arielka is asking, why do crop circles have to be crop circles? They could be forest circles and metal circles.
Good one. Well, I've got some pictures. I'll probably have to dig them up, but I've got some tree circles that happened in Holland. We've got some pictures of some trees that bent over into a circle, and they weren't
really
broken.
Do you have pictures of that?
Oh,
Yeah. I've got pictures of those.
That's really cool.
The researcher from Holland, Janet Ossebaard, went to the place, and she contacted the local council and said, look, there's this thing here, we want to research it. And they just sent some forestry guys out with chainsaws and they cut them all down.
Okay, we are looking forward to see those images. Rodrigo, do you have some question for Gary?
Well, I'd like to know from Gary, what's his opinion about people. We know there are people that build some of those crop circles, namely I remember a name. I think is Matthew Williams.
Yes.
And some of these people say, yeah, okay. Some of these people say that claim that they have paranormal experiences inside the circles. They see orbs while they're building the circles. They feel their health being compromised in some way. They feel dizzy when they're producing these crop circles. Do you think that there's a and they also say that they receive some kind of channel the idea of the design that they will implement in the field. Do you think that even these people that are making some, we don't know how many, but some of these crop circles, do you think they may be influenced by some kind of phenomenon related to those who make the genuine crop circles? Do you think there's some similarity? Do you think it's all a bunch of loons that say they are being influenced? What do you think about it, Gary?
Well, I could go on with that answer.
I know.
Okay. The first thing I would say to you is this: those people like Matthew Williams, whose name you mentioned, and there's several others, not very many, but several others, who say that they make the crop circles as a way of tricking people, and they do it as a, I don't know, they do it as a kind of public education to reveal, naivety and stuff like this. That's what they say. They also, as you said, point out that they have paranormal experiences whilst they're making them, or paranormal experiences that help them have special powers to make them really, really fast, right? They say that they can sometimes do these things in 5 hours because they're possessed by some kind of other intelligence, right? And so I don't know whether that's true or not, but I say this to you. That why is it that the people who say that these things happen to them whilst they're making crop circles with boards and rope using these very simple tools have all these paranormal experiences? Why is it they attack everybody that says, well, what if it could just be the ball of light on its own, right, that we don't know? Why does it have to be a ball of light that swims around you or jumps in your body and gives you special powers? Why is it only you that can have the paranormal experiences? And yet anybody that suggests, well, I was sitting on a hill, for example, a big white flash of light, 1,000-foot crop circle appeared in front of us. I was attacked by Matthew Williams and all these people as being a fraud and that I made it to try and trick the public. Why would they attack me? Why wouldn't they say, wow, yeah, that's happened to us too when we've been out making them? They don't say that. They attack me and call me a liar and a fraud and, and all of this. So I've got a problem with the fact that they can be on both sides of this coin, right? They can have all the paranormal experiences in the world, but nobody else can, and no other explanation for it being paranormal can be accepted.
Yeah, you have been in documentaries as well, trying to explain or debunk the circle makers, right?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a documentary coming out. Hopefully, unfortunately, I was supposed to go and do the voiceover. I've almost come to the end of making a documentary that's it's not quite there yet, but I was going to record the voiceover tomorrow. But that basically looks at all the evidence that I've presented over the years to show that, to make crop circles can be done, but this is what it takes. And here's the video evidence of it happening. And then I present evidence of crop circles which are known to have appeared in just a few hours of darkness, and I show their size and their complexity and compare the two and draw a direct comparison. And it's that we've asked these circle makers over the years. We said, look, just do it. Just, if you keep saying you make them and you get the paranormal, just come out, at 11 o'clock at night, go into that field. We'll all sit on the hill quietly and we'll watch you do it. That they won't do it because they can't.
Gary, okay, I have one or two images that I would love to see your opinion about them because they are messing with my mind from years. So I'll show you the first one before we watch your images. Okay, it's this
while
one.
we do that, Philip. Gary, do you have videos made by yourself, right?
Yeah.
Can you point us? Yeah. Can you point us anywhere?
They're all over the
where we
place.
can watch them?
There's a documentary. The most recent one I was in was called Crop Circle Realities. That's made by the man that I'm making this current one with, Darcy Weir. You can go on. You can find that. Just Google Crop Circle Realities, and you'll see it on there. There's stuff I've done in Brazil with the History Channel. I never see much of these.
I've watched the lecture of yours where you showed an incredible video. I love that. I love that one.
Yeah,
I recommend everyone to watch your lectures. They're great.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Gary, please tell me about this image.
This one is in my documentary. This one is in my documentary because, people want to talk about contact, and if there is any kind of messages that are clear, not ambiguous in a way, where you can say they're not just geometric and symbolic of number and a universal language. If there's something that's can be translated as a message, then this crop circle, this formation, not crop circle, this formation categorizes as one of those. I will point out, can you see the lines, the horizontal lines? Well, they're not quite horizontal, they're diagonal lines, 2 lines each going across from bottom to right, from right to left, sorry. Yeah, these 2 lines that go through the field. No, if you zoom back a bit, they're on the outside of the crop circle, the formation, as well as on the inside.
São as linhas que atravessam aquelas 2 linhas paralelas.
Yeah, those. So you see the gap in between those. That's 25 meters. Okay, that's 75 feet between there and there. You got it. So if you count across the field, right, to look at the scale of that, then you'll get some idea.
That's enormous.
Yeah, we're talking very big here. Okay. And can you see the 3 UFOs that are on the left-hand side of the image inside? Yeah. So there's 3 left UFOs on his shoulder, over his shoulder on the left-hand side. And then obviously an alien face, a stereotypical alien face.
A grumpy one.
A grumpy one, yeah, maybe so. And then there's this disc, and then there's this disc on the right-hand side, which has got all these little squares that seem to spiral out from the center. And a great researcher who's sadly no longer with us, called Paul Weigay, he realized that they were in clumps of 8. And because he was a computer programmer of the day, that with ASCII, he was familiar with using ASCII to convert digital data into the English language, the alphabet. He realized it, so he began to start taking these sort of little dots and dashes there and turning them into ASCII and turn them into an alphabet. And that's where you get this message that's at the bottom of your image there: beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. Actually said, believe there is good out there. There's something missing from that little thing there. So there was an emphasis on believe there is good out there, like, as if something like, someone trying to say to you, don't worry. We oppose deception, which has been a common theme. That slogan, we oppose deception, has been repeated before. It's been put in a crop formation that was of a post-Augustine Latin, 14th century Augustine Latin, which when you turned it into English, it said "Opono astos," which meant we oppose deception, right? Wow. And then conduit closing. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to say, that definitely says there's an extraterrestrial element to me. Whether or not extraterrestrials are responsible for all the crop circles, it could be a joint effort, right, between I don't know.
This one is an impossible one to make at the middle of the night with a flashlight and some sticks.
It's all made up. I've got images. I've got some. I don't know if I've got them here. They're on my documentary, but I've got some wonderful ground images of that, where you see when you're in it. It's just these lines that get thicker and narrower, and there's no way you can figure out when you're on the ground, standing around, looking around, what you're in. There's no way. It's too big.
And this formation, it was a 2-step formation, right?
No, not that one. The one the year before was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was the
I have one more image that still messes my mind every single time I look at it. It's this one.
I got a feeling I'm going to know what this is. The Arecibo message. That's the one that's from the year before, Francisco.
Exactly.
So you've got it upside down there, right? It should be the other way. Be rotated 180. Yeah, there you go. So in
This
1974,
is mind-blowing.
It is because and this is in my documentary that's coming out. So in 1974, Frank Drake and Carl Sagan, as everybody knows, sent a message from Arecibo radio telescope in Puerto Rico to Messier 13 star cluster, and it was encoded in ones and zeros, and it basically sent out basic information about us, right? Saying this is who we are. You know, we use a number system of counting base 10. And we've got 4 nucleotides in our DNA, you know, hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, and oxygen. The average height of a human's 5'9". That's on the left picture. You can see like a picture of a drawing of a man, the average height. There's a picture of the radio telescope at Arecibo at the bottom. The little dots and dashes above that, the one on the right, the 9 squares on the right hand side of the left message as we're looking at them, that's representing the sun. Then you've got Mercury and Venus, and then Earth is highlighted, stood up, to show that we live on the 3rd planet from the sun. So we're telling this alien civilization, whoever might intercept the message, hello, this is us, this is Earth, this is what we're made of, please come visit someday. And then on the right is what some people believe is the reply, which was moved into a field of crop. They said they had a base count of 10 as well, which, you know, comes up with this universal thing of mathematics, base count of 10. They had 1 extra nucleotide in their DNA. It said they had a silicon in their DNA. You can see a stereotypical alien with a big head there, pictured on the right-hand image, which shows they've got an average height of about 3'4", and their sun has so many moons around it. And lost it. I got back one. Where are we? No, upside down again. And then the bottom picture, that's quite interesting. So it's the top picture now, the way you've got the image showing to us. The other way.
Tens de rodar outra vez.
That's it.
Pronto.
So at the bottom there, you see the bottom, that's they're telling us what technology they use to send the message to us, like we did to them, right? We showed them a picture of the Arecibo telescope. And so you see this kind of strange design that's at the bottom of it. That's actually a crop circle that appeared in the very same field 1 year before. So it's kind of weird. It seems to be telling us that the crop circle that came a year before encoded this one, or unless anybody's got a better idea, I don't know. But that's certainly what it is.
Yeah, a crop circle that encoded the transmission system from that civilization. Before, without even knowing if they would get. They got the message. First, they send they show a crop circle of the transmission system, and then they respond to this one
a year later in the same place. So the crop circle,
it's kind of mind-blowing.
Yes, it's kind of So
indeed. So
really cool.
Coming to an end, I remember that I believe it was the second presentation in Brazil where you talked about the message. The interpretation of the message. Could you finalize with that?
That with the message. So as you said earlier, I've kind of already alluded to it. Really, that it's sort of speaking to us about us. It's speaking to us about consciousness. It seems to be like a wise teacher, right? That knows us better than we know ourselves. And when you interact with the crop circles for as long as I have, and I've had friends that this is, they feel the same. That it's almost like you're being guided sometimes, to go in different ways, and it's a form of intuition, but sort of intuition on steroids in a way sometimes. And we've all felt that it's like this wise teacher, really, that's trying to help humanity, that's trying to say, look, this is you've got all these opportunities, all these potentials, and you do have free will, right? And free will means that you do have the ability to destroy yourselves, otherwise it wouldn't be free will. And so they're laying our cards on the table, of all of what potential we could be, of what the miraculous chances of us being here against all odds for life and consciousness to actually be here having this conversation. We are, and we're not doing the best with it right now. And maybe we could look at where we've come from and what we're doing, and go in a different future. And some of that comes from, you know, this notion of squaring the circle, which the crop circles have alluded to for 25 years. I'll show you some slides in a minute. That means uniting heaven and earth. A square represents earth, 4 directions. Square is rational. It's practical. If you make paving stones, you need square ones, not like the picture of the wall behind me. It's got different ones, but ones that fit together nicely. Round, you know, bricks wouldn't work to build a house. You have to have squares. So square is an earthly thing that we use, the number 4. But the circle is the symbol of heaven. Yeah, it's infinite. It goes on and on and on. And so if you make a square and a circle exactly the same area or size, you're said to be symbolizing uniting heaven and earth. And so I believe that they're pointing out that we once worshipped the goddess, we worshipped the giver of life, the Holy Mother. We've become very patriotic, and there seems to have been a time when we thought differently about the feminine aspect of this duality that we exist in, and they're reminding us of all of these things to maybe decide that we could go somewhere different with our futures, or, you know, or at least pave the way for our grandchildren's futures or whatever. So that's what I believe. Yes, that's what I believe the message is.
So do you have something to show us?
Yeah, I've got loads of things I can show you. I don't really know what. Let's talk about squaring the circle. Yeah, so everyone knows about squaring the circle with the Vitruvian Man. Are you able to see these slides that I'm putting up? How do I put them onto you?
Where you're accessing the stream, you're in front of the different computers.
Yeah, I've got 2 screens. I can share. Just do I press present?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you get the option for
slides.
Yeah.
You have the slides.
Yeah.
No, I've only got like a keynote presentation here, like a PowerPoint slide here. How do I put that onto the screen?
When you try to present, don't you have an option?
It says slides, but then when I open that, it says you have no slides. The slides.
No. You probably have to.
You have to open first.
Share screen.
Share screen.
Yeah.
2 monitors.
Then you'll have the option for the window.
Okay. And, keynote. Share. Chrome's lost permissions.
This is really cool for me.
I might not be yet because
it's great for me.
I've got some problems with permissions here. Go to system preferences.
Filipe, já deste permissão?
What have I got to do? I've got to unclick.
Estás em mute, Filipe.
Google Chrome. If I
saiu. Espero que volte a entrar.
O botão errado.
Estás em mute, Filipe.
E eu estava tão curioso.
Sim, perdemos o nosso convidado e agora ficámos muito curiosos com as árvores também. E já cá temos novamente o Gary connosco.
All right. Window.
Filipe, nós como designers, não é? Nós como designers, esta parte vai ser excelente.
Can you see it now? There we are.
It's okay. Here we are. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so everyone's familiar with the squaring and the circle from Leonardo da Vinci's caricature here of the Vitruvian Man. And this man is the measure of all things, and man is the mediator between heaven and earth, or maybe humanity is probably the better. So it's all to do with proportions. You see that, the hands and the feet and the diameter and the height. So it says man is the measure of the universe, the heaven and earth. That's kind of the message there. And so this crop circle in 1999 my friend Michael Blickman looked at this crop circle and realized there was something going on inside it. It was a classic quintuplet, which we've seen hundreds of, with these 5 dots that we've seen many, many times. But this time, the circle that's in the center impinged into the circles that are on the outside, the 4 circles. So I should be able to play them. It should play. There we are. Oh, hang on. There we are. So you see here, if you join up the centers of those satellite circles, and then you measure the square with the circle underneath it, they're accurate to the thickness of a pencil line. They're so accurate that you know the pencil line mediates how accurate they are. So with 5 simple circles, we've been shown the solution to an ancient geometric puzzle here of squaring the circle, uniting heaven and earth. And so here's another one. This does the same thing, really. If you draw a circle through the centers of those satellite circles, and then you sort of add 4 imaginary ones that are the same, and then put a square on the outsides of those, then measure that square against those circles, then you get a squared circle again. And there's also a pentagram that's hidden in there as well, because of the proportions of that circle, the size of that circle in the center. You can describe a pentagram, the symbol for life, 5 in the center of that. So Alan Brown looked back over 25 years of history of the crop circle.
By following the path of the...
This is amazing, yeah.
So yeah, if we go on
by following the path of those 2 thin lines,
you see the thin lines on the
that they
outside.
made a perfect circle.
I got a narration with this one, sorry, my audio's up. But
he then moved this circle up to the center of the outer ring of standing wheat and inscribed a square whose corners touched the outer edge of the formation.
So you see again a solution to a squared circle, but hidden inside this formation with 2 very subtle curved lines on the outside border. So it took Bert Janssen, and he's been looking for these things for years, and he finds them. So then when we look at Stonehenge, Stonehenge has got this circle on the outside and a circle on the inside, just like this. And if we draw a circle around that, and then we draw a square on the inside, then it shows us that Stonehenge actually encoded the solution to this problem as well. So our ancestors were very familiar with this. So this is kind of why we're being reminded of something that our ancestors were obviously well tuned into when they built Stonehenge. It makes it more than a calendar. It's obviously still talking about heaven and earth, but it's more than a calendar. So with this one, yeah, if you make a circle and a square the same size with the same sort of length of rope, it actually encodes the proportions of the earth and the moon, the ratios and the proportions between our earth and the moon, if you pull the moon out of the sky. So it's just a massive coincidence that the moon and the earth and the Stonehenge have encoded these same numbers and proportions, and it all works out in English miles. 7,920 miles, 540. I could go into it in more detail, but this is kind of what we've discovered from hidden geometry inside crop circles. There you go. So 5040, which is the ratio between the radius of the Earth and the Moon, is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7, the first 7 numbers. And then the diameter of the Earth is 8 times 9 times 10 times 11, which is 7,920 miles. So it's another strange coincidence, that number that makes up this consciousness. You see, just uses these simple children's numbers to encode the ratios and proportions of the Earth and the Moon. So I've found that there are like 5 categories of crop circles. Geometry is obviously one of them. The other one's philosophical and religious symbols. So we see the Star of David, the Om, the Yin Yang, Jewish and references to the Tree of Life, things like that, like the cross. This is huge. Yin Yang, Star of David, Jewish menorah, Tree of Life, Om symbol, alien faces. This is a picture a friend of mine took looks like in a UFO up in the daytime. She just took the picture of her daughter walking down the field and happened to catch something weird when she looked at the pictures. This is the Arecibo reply to the Arecibo message with the face. I was going to show you. That's the crop circle that appeared the year before that may have encoded, or they're saying they encoded this crop circle with.
Yeah. So with this crop circle, nobody had an idea what it was before the other one, the other that came the other that turned out the next year, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's the possibility that in many of the crop circles that we've been interpreting, there's also a lot of more interpreting to do. I mean,
absolutely.
There may be other meanings, other.
Yeah. The future I hope for is that, you know, that all this stuff, and I think that's why a lot of my friends like Steve Alexander, they've been photographing them for years. They want a record of them. I think that's what Monique Klinkenberg and the others are about as well. You know, let's record these, because it may not be 2 generations before somebody wakes up and says, hang on a minute, and discovers something, because there's bound to be more hidden in them. I think these are treasure troves of information that we've not scratched the surface of yet, really.
Yeah, it's amazing. Outstanding.
I've got others. I'm not sure what else I can show you. Hang on, I'll just look through. This one was a very interesting one. I don't know if I really love this information. You remember the figures I showed you earlier of 7920, the diameter of the Earth, 7920, 792. Yes. You take the 0 off, got 792. And 5040 is the radius between the Earth and the Moon that squares the circle. We see all those little squares that are going around the outside edge of that crop circle here. There's 792 of them, and 504 of them have been flattened, making all the little gaps in the center and edges. And so they've used those same numbers, the proportions of the Earth and the Moon, to encode what is a mitochondrial DNA spiral. It's the DNA that passes from the mother to the daughter. We get it, but we don't pass it on, right? It only goes from the mother line. So theoretically, the mitochondrial DNA that's in every woman goes back to the primordial Eve, right, which is the goddess, right? So somebody created a design, right, which was harvested the next morning. You can see the slide. The next morning, it was already being cut out by the farmer. And they worked out that they could make a mitochondrial DNA with 792 and 504 encoded in them. That's these ratios and proportions here you see that square the circle, make heaven and earth unite. And they put it in a field of wheat that got cut out the next day. And amazingly, if you look at the center circle, right, the center standing wheat, there's no hole in the center. That's like, you know, that's almost like 200 feet in diameter. I think that well, no, it's about 110 feet. So you got to have somebody standing in the center if you're going to mark a perfect circle out like that. You know, as you make a hole in the middle, but there isn't one. So that's another kind of miracle that gets overlooked. So yeah, so that's what you get, this 792. So 792 and 504, if you add them together, you get 1296, right? So what's 1296? So when the first alphabet was created, which is Hebrew and Greek, every symbol of the alphabet had a number that corresponded to it. So there was a mathematical, because consciousness, it seems, and communication has this communication between consciousnesses. It seems that they began to use it with number associated with it. So you can add up sentences, or you can add up words, right? And they have a numerical value. Like this, ABC 1 2 3 4 5 for everything. So when you add up 1296, you get the goddess of all creation. So it really is talking to us about the goddess. And so we've had, you know, these issues of crop circles that emanate, and this is in Alton Barnes again. The place of the goddess, this crop circle was there, and I had a guru come over in 2008. I gave a tour to him and a lot of his acolytes, and he invited me to India. And I went to India in the October after the season ended, and he brought me on stage. and he showed everybody the picture of the goddess. And it was at a festival in Hyderabad of the goddess, and called Navaratri. It's a 9-day festival of the goddess. And he brought me on stage in front of all these people and showed them the pictures of the crop circles and gave me those lovely orange robes, which signified that I was making my own spiritual path. That the 25 years or whatever it is I'd spent, 20 years probably at that point, following the crop circles, that I'd earned my own sort of right to create my own spiritual path, which means I was a sannyasin apparently. So it was a very nice honor to get that. So yeah,
indeed. Well, what a journey! What a journey!
Exactly.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this, all your knowledge, all your experience. It was a huge pleasure to have met you in person, and indeed, you have to be open to understand the message, or
I think so.
like we talked in Brazil,
yes,
pearls to pigs.
Pearls to pigs. You saved me actually, Francisco, because I was, as you know, I was feeling a little bit frustrated with some things, and like when you came out and said what you said to me, I was like, thank you. It's so nice to be recognized, that, because I remember what you said, what you're talking about is another level. It's different. You said that phrase, and I was like, that helped me at that time.
This was an amazing journey. Thank you so much for guiding us in this journey. It was it was a pleasure. I could stay hours here watching crop circles and talking about them. Thank you so much, Gary, for your time, for your patience.
And it made clear for some people that still don't understand exactly what we are talking about. I think this was, it's not everything is here. Go and check for other information, but the basics, you have to open your mind and check the right information. If you have any doubts, please write to Gary King.
Sure. I'll try and answer all your questions. But yeah, my final message would be, if you put aside the who's putting the message through the door, who's the postman, because he wants to remain anonymous, if you put that to one side and then look at all this other stuff that I've brought up, you will find something there's a very good friend of mine, Andy, who I've made this documentary with, said that when you dig deeper into the crop circles, after a while, you realize you're only digging deeper into your own soul. And that really is the journey for me.
Wow.
That really is. It's knowing yourself and learning about yourself.
That's really important. I think that's,
it is.
Yeah.
Once again, Gary, thank you so much. We hope to have you here again with us in the future. Thank you so much.
And hope to meet you again. Maybe in the UK.
Come over with this crop circles. I'll take you around.
Obrigado, Felipe. Obrigado, Rodrigo. Obrigado a todos.
Bem. Agradeço também a todos os que nos acompanharam. Foi uma viagem fantástica. E depois desta conversa com o Gary, de certa forma, reforça a minha convicção anterior. Eu acredito que há muito de marketing aqui, há muito de publicidade, há muito de expressão artística, há imenso de golpes turísticos, mas também existe algo que... uma inteligência, algo que se manifesta e que ainda vai transcendendo a nossa compreensão das coisas. E, portanto, foi...
Isto que o Gary apresentou faz-nos pensar. Né? Precisamente, uma pessoa dedicar um bocadinho de tempo a tentar perceber aquilo que ele quis dizer. Não é a origem do fenómeno que interessa aqui, é tentar perceber se de facto qual é a mensagem. E aí começam as coisas a fazer sentido. Acho que uma pessoa deve manter a mente aberta. Sem dúvida alguma que há uma indústria de turismo à volta disto. Eu, quando estive lá, eu via a carrada de caminhonetes cheias de asiáticos para irem ver os crop circles. É uma loucura total, não é? Mas para além disso, se calhar há mais qualquer coisa. E eu gostei muito quando estive com ele, e a apresentação que ele fez. Claramente ele emociona-se porque quer tentar passar, mas claro que nem sempre a audiência também está disponível para ouvir. E às vezes, enfim...
Sim, eu acho que, no geral, a audiência perde-se muito com a questão de quem é que faz isto? São extraterrestres? Não são. E o Gary aqui frisou uma questão muito interessante. O importante não é quem o faz, mas qual é a mensagem, o que é que pretendem transmitir. E talvez a resposta para estes crop circles, para estas imagens, esteja muito na matemática, que foi algo que ficou bem reforçado hoje, a geometria, a geometria sagrada, também a filosofia e, quem sabe, a religião. Portanto, isto é
Anda tudo à volta do mesmo.
Anda tudo à volta do mesmo e é fascinante e como eu disse ao Gary, era capaz de perder horas aqui a falar sobre isto e a analisar tantos outros que tenho aqui no computador. Foi uma viagem fantástica, espero que todos aproveitem da melhor forma esta viagem que o Gary nos proporcionou. Rodrigo,
se alguém tiver a possibilidade de passar em Avebury, em Inglaterra, não deixe de ir ver o Museu de Crop Circles. É simples, mas está muito bem conseguido. Está mesmo muito bem conseguido. Vale a pena. Estive lá a filmar e foi uma pena na altura não podemos ter estado com o Gary. Ele estava para fora. Penso que até estava com o Jaime Moçan na altura. Depois desentendemos, mas isso é uma história à parte. Mas,
Rodrigo. Sim, Francisco.
Não, força.
Ia perguntar ao Rodrigo se tinha mais algumas palavras finais, mas não queria interromper o seu raciocínio.
Não, basicamente ficámos aqui com uma perspectiva espetacular daquilo que é o fenómeno e de uma coisa muito importante que é de facto isto que temos estado, que o Gary falou e que temos estado a falar aqui, que é a mensagem. Olhamos para a mensagem porque o fenómeno, nós sabemos que até o fenómeno OVNI em geral, noutras situações, em situações de abdução, em situações de avistamentos, etc., atua de diferentes formas e sabemos que tem um grande impacto e consegue influenciar o próprio ser humano, consegue influenciar a própria mente do ser humano. Portanto, aqui poderá acontecer a mesma coisa. Poderíamos estar a receber mensagens ou poderá estar a haver comunicação entre os seres humanos e outras entidades através dos crop circles, por exemplo.
E mais uma vez, matemática é a língua universal.
Exatamente. Temos de trazer o Gary novamente, porque agora que estamos a mergulhar nestes temas e vêm imagens à cabeça. Não falámos da Roswell Stone, que é uma pedra encontrada em Roswell, supostamente num dos locais dos 2 despenhamentos, que tem a marca de um crop circle desenhada também. Portanto, é mais um motivo para trazermos aqui o Gary para uma próxima ocasião. Muito bem, está na hora de irmos embora, começar a fazer as malas e deixem-me agradecer a quem tornou esta emissão possível.
Um obrigado especial a todos.
Obrigado a todos, é tudo por hoje e voltaremos em breve com mais Exo Realidades. Obrigado.
Até breve. Bom domingo.
Partilhem e subscrevam já agora.
Abraços.